Hi there. I was phoned this morning to do an interview with BBC Radio West Midlands. So I'd just like to share that interview with you now. It's regarding metal detecting.
Double 956. The big guy. I feel a bit sorry for him. Anyway, now listen, I want to talk about finding things of value. There's a story in the press about a police officer who took the oath to uphold the law, and he's actually broken the law because he didn't do the right thing when he found some gold coins. And there is some legal protocol as well. I mean, if you go on a farmer's field and you find some stash, you find a bit of bounty, then you've got to go arse with the farmer, I think. But if the bounty is over 300 years old, well, I tell you what, rather than me bluff my way through this, earlier on I spoke to Matthew Hepworth, a metal detector who discovered a chisel and a dagger in a field, another bounty. Now Matthew does the right thing. He goes 50-50 with the farmer. Anyway, I started off by asking Matthew when he started.
I was about 16 years of age, and I've always been interested in history, and then I bought a cheap second-hand metal detector, got permission off a local farm. I went on the land, found a few old pennies and half pennies, and I was hooked from then on, really.
Yeah, I bet you were. That's the important thing, isn't it, to get permission, obviously, otherwise you're trespassing.
Definitely. It's against the law, of course, if you go on the land without permission, as you say, it's trespassing. First and foremost, you obtain consent off landowner to search the farmland you do, that's correct.
Right. Do farmers ever say no to you?
Occasionally, yes. I have swayed them in the past. I've obviously discussed what I've found on local farmland, and then, of course, they've relented and said, yes, you can go on the land. So
yeah.
I have been turned away a few times, though.
What is in it for them, then?
With the landowner agreement, generally, verbally, we agree that if there's anything of potential value, potential treasure, we would have a verbal agreement of 50% share.
Cynically, I suppose, they would wonder whether you're going to be honest with them if you find a little gold coin, whether we just put it in your pocket.
Well, I think if people do that, then they're not right for the hobby. That's kind of against what law-abiding citizens do, who go metal detecting. That's as far as I know.
Yeah.
People who find things of interest like that generally do declare it to the farmer. Anything of potential treasure, which is an item over 300 years of age of 10% precious metal, by law has to be declared. People may want to sell it but they shouldn't do that. They should stick to the law because they can get a jail term or a hefty fine. So
sure. So what is the law at the moment? Anything over 300 years old?
300 years of age, you've got 2 weeks to declare that to the local fines liaison officer, and they look into that. And if they believe, yes, it is an artifact or a coin, I think it's 2 coins in close proximity of 10% precious metal, or 2 items of prehistoric metalwork, or an artifact of 10% precious metal over 300 years of age, and it's classed as potential treasure. And then the fines liaison officer will inform the coroner for the county. And
then what happens? Do you lose it?
It's obviously looked into. There will be a coroner's inquest with the finder present generally, as well as the landowner. The coroner will make the final verdict to decide is it classed as treasure or not. If it is classed as treasure, from my own experience, then it would be valued in London, I believe, at the British Museum, the Treasury Valuing Committee, to get a fair market value for the find. And that's if a museum is interested in acquiring the object, of course.
And if not, then what? You just go twos up with the farmer?
It will be disclaimed and returned to finder.
And you've got to sell it, you've got to find someone who wants to buy it then?
Potentially, yeah.
All right, okay. What have you found?
I've recently, 3 years ago, I found a Bronze Age hoard, which actually, it turned out to be an unknown early Bronze Age burial site, which none of the experts knew about. I had a hunch for years that there was something special on the site, just on some local farmland. So I was lucky enough to find that. Further excavation was carried on the site, which yielded more information, and it was found to be an unknown Bronze Age burial site, which is still being researched into now, and there's going to be a future excavation.
Could you earn a couple of quid from that, Matthew?
Potentially, but as I've said before, I'm not in the hobby for money. I'm into the history and actually salvaging that piece of metalwork or even non-metal work. When you're in the fields, in a ploughed field, you may look at the ground. You're looking for evidence of habitation, looking at pottery, looking at flint work, anything of interest. And then, of course, even it doesn't have to be metallic to have interest. And then we would report that back to the fines liaison officer, and obviously then it's documented, it's recorded where that item was found for future generations.
Matthew, what's the most expensive metal detector you can buy? And what sets the high-end technology from the bargain basement stuff?
Well, technology is always improving, as we all know, with everything in life. But the top of the range now, I would say, top of the range, £2,000.
And what sets that apart from something for a couple of £100 from Argos?
Well, I mean, with my own experience, I don't think you're doing yourself any justice to get a cheaper range machine. I mean, you can get some really good second-hand metal detectors on internet websites.
But does it filter out, for example, worthless stuff from high-value gold and things?
If we take this into context, obviously in your area, you know about the Staffordshire Hoard, the famous Staffordshire Hoard. That gentleman who found that, I'm aware that he bought a second-hand metal detector and a car boot, if I'm right in thinking, for less than £100.
Could he have missed that with a cheaper product?
The one that you mentioned from Argos, potentially, yes. You're limiting your depth, you're limiting your discrimination, which is like how the metal detector cuts out different types of metal, how it maps the ground. Then you're reducing your chances of finding something. But of course, if you're prepared to gamble and pay a little bit extra, if you're interested in the hobby that much, then yes, you increase your odds. But at the end of the day, the item's got to be in that field and you've got to walk over it.
Okay, that's right. It has to be in that field and you have to walk over it. That's Matthew Hepworth, a metal detector who discovered a chisel and a dagger in a field. Wasn't it interesting about what you have to do in the protocol? Well, I found it interesting. Okay, here's them people. Search. There you go. Search for a hero. If a hero's buried in a field, Matthew will find him.
There you go, guys. Hope that was of interest to you. Thank you.